The Super Nintendo has my favorite library of games for any console. Impressive given the fact that it has the largest number of officially licensed games for any cartridge-based system. So today, I wanted to talk about some of the games that I think are overlooked on the system, particularly the Japanese side of the Super Famicom. Let's start with Camelot Tree, released by Taito in 1992. Now this one isn't that obscure, and that's why I'm doing it first. In fact, unlike every other game in this video, it did release outside of Japan, even in all three major regions. But it's probably the most obscure Super Nintendo game to release in all three major regions. Though in the US and Europe, it was retitled On the Ball. But I'm gonna keep calling it Camelot Tree because, come on. Now, I just want you to imagine what this game is about from that name. That's right, it's a game where you have to navigate a ball around a rotating maze that you control. Of course. Think something similar to Loco Roco or those Sonic special stages. Really, that's it. Now, I think it's fun, but I totally understand if this makes someone motion sick. In fact, if it is, I just recommend looking away from the screen during this part till we get to the next game. It won't be that long as there's not much to say about this game. So how about we talk about weird random stuff surrounding it? Some of these stage names are super weird. Aqua Palace, where's the Aqua? Menthol Moon, shouldn't this be called Aqua Palace? In the Camel? Okay, I don't want to know what part of the camel I'm in, just get me out of here. In the international versions, they redesigned the anime girl Eureka, the goddess of space-time that appears throughout the game, so that she no longer has green hair, but rather brown hair. Weirdly though, in one of the end screens exclusive to the Japanese version, she's depicted with brown hair. You know, for a literal goddess, she sure is humble. She always bows down to you when you skip the tutorial screens. One mild criticism that I have is that for no apparent reason, the password and name entry screen was made unnecessarily difficult to use. Anyways, this isn't the only version of the game. It's a port of an arcade game, one that strangely enough was called Camelot Tree internationally. It was also ported to the Sharp X68000 computer in Japan, and a sequel was even made for the DS with even more anime girls, which some of you may have played as this version was released in Europe and North America as Labyrinth. These versions actually allow you to create custom balls, so this Super Nintendo port might actually be one of the weaker versions of the game. Crazy given how, all things considered, it's still a great game. I think Taito's at their best when they do abstract stuff like Arkanoid kicks and this. And I'm shocked there aren't more Camelot Tree sequels or clones out there. If I'm being honest, Camelot Tree is a game I enjoy playing more than talking about, which is probably some of the highest praise I could give to a game. In fact, I'm out of stuff to say about it, so let's head over to Wikipedia and look for sources for some more info I may have missed. I'm not seeing anything. The game was called Camelot Tree this whole time? Moving on. Now let's actually get into the crazy obscure games that were only released for the Super Famicom in Japan. Here's one that I stumbled across while researching for my video game mysteries video that you may have seen. Libble Rabble. This is a 1983 Namco arcade game created by Pac-Man creator Toru Iwatani. The gameplay is apparently inspired by an experience he had in a crowded disco hall in which he wanted to tie people up with ropes and throw them out of the way. Well, that's interesting. In this game, you control two arrows, a red one named Libble and a blue one named Rabble, as you attempt to harvest these little mushlins by trapping them. It really is that simple. Now, if it wasn't obvious from that description, there's a reason why this game was never released to any of the home consoles of the 80s, as its dual joystick gameplay couldn't be replicated by any of those controllers. But at last, here comes the Super Famicom, a console with a nearly perfectly symmetrical controller, and thus, the ability to play Libble Rabble. Namco finally realized this and released the game to the system in 1994. and it came with a D-pad overlay for the buttons. For the most part, it's a really good, accurate port, but with one strange addition: a new cutscene that shows the plot of the game. And my god, does it look out of place mixed with the 1983 arcade game graphics. It's just some generic story written in traditional top to bottom, left to right Japanese, interestingly enough, about some brothers trying to harvest some mushrooms. Rule number 1 of video game storytelling: it almost always ruins things when you try to personify abstract things. Rule number 2 of video game storytelling: don't have your little story scene for your re-release of a 1983 arcade game be 4 minutes long. I'm not joking either, that's literally how long it is. I mean, you can skip it, but actually trying to sit through it is a slog. I think this was put in here as a way to sort of justify a re-release of an 11-year-old arcade game at the time. Actually, I kinda lied when I said this game wasn't possible until the Super Famicom, as you can also play the game with 2 controllers. But, I mean, this is a game where you can play with another player on 1 controller. But there's one problem with this game. One major problem. It's really easy. I found a reliable method to beat every stage quickly, as you can see from this footage, and I lasted for 28 seasons. Your only real obstacle is the enemies, but they're so easy to dodge this way, and it makes the whole game trivial. But it's too charming to hate. I especially love the music, and given the fact that this game came out in 1983, this was probably the best video game music up to that point. It has a very tropical vibe for some reason. Very relaxing music to play over Mushlin murder. Relax, Libbles, it's called dark humor. Actually, this game had me thinking that Namco missed the perfect opportunity when the PlayStation DualShock controller came out to release a Namco Museum game that included Libble Rabble on it simultaneously, taking advantage of the dual analog controls. Come on, Namco. Anyways, this is a cute game. I just love harvesting the cute little mushlins. But you know what isn't cute? Having your data harvested by hackers and corporations. That's never cute. Now let's talk about another cute game, Nanto to Isho Kuru Puzzle, released by Victor also in 1994. This game is shockingly obscure for its interesting background. It's based on a Japanese children's book series, and its gameplay was developed by Mega Man creator Akira Kitamura and Pokemon creator Satoshi Tajiri. Yet despite this, you've likely never heard of this game. Apparently, it was Kitamura's last game work, and I actually found out about it from his Twitter bio. This game is a falling objects matching puzzle game, but with one distinct gimmick setting it apart. Rather than being able to shift or rotate the pieces, every one of the falling objects has another object on the other side and you're able to flip them. That's really it. It doesn't even need the license, but this game is pretty fun, and if you like these kinds of games or these creators' work, you should check it out. My only real complaint is that, just like Libble Rabble, this game is just a little too easy. A problem that comes from the fact that it's a match 2 game. I think it would be much more interesting as a match 3 game. But I get why they designed the game that way. It's a game for very small children. There's also a Game Boy version, but it's not really worth playing these days compared to the Super Famicom version. I really wish this gameplay concept would be revisited in a newer game. It has a lot of unexplored potential. Now let's close this video out by talking about a Sega game on the Super Famicom. Wait, what? Columns was ported to the Super Famicom in 1999, when the Dreamcast was already out. Exclusively on Nintendo's Nintendo Power, no, not that one, service that allowed people to essentially download games to a cartridge. I've been wanting to find a way to talk about this game for a while, but I could never figure out how. I thought of reviewing all of the Nintendo Power exclusive games, but I didn't really find the other ones interesting. Then I came up with the idea of doing a video on Sega games on Nintendo consoles before the one everyone thinks is the first. And I actually got pretty far into writing it, but I stopped once I realized that there were way more than I was aware of. One set of games was giving me real trouble, and I found out that Sega had actually bought the rights to Puyo Puyo before Compile had shattered. And let me tell you, take the amount of Puyo Puyo games that you think released for Nintendo consoles at this time and triple it. I did not want to repeatedly talk about what is essentially the same game. Maybe I'll revisit the idea one day, but I'm not really feeling it anymore. I mean, I could do a video on Nintendo games on Sega consoles, but that never officially happened. Now, I really have no clue why Sega sold the rights off to Columns, but held on tightly to their other games. I know Sega didn't initially own the rights to Columns, but by 1990, when they had made the arcade, Mega Drive, and Game Gear versions, they had secured the rights for themselves, and it became one of their most popular games associated with the brand. But for some reason, in the late 90s, they sold the rights to port the game to the Super Famicom and Game Boy Color to Media Factory. While I have no clue why the Super Famicom version had to exist, I absolutely get why there was a Game Boy Color version, as Sega didn't have their own handheld at this point. Though I don't know why they didn't just have it be put on the Neo Geo Pocket Color, considering they were giving their handheld loyalty to SNK at this time. But whatever, what about the Super Famicom game? This is actually shockingly good, and I'd honestly say it's better than the Mega Drive version of Columns. Its main draw is the Versus mode, in which you can play as a bunch of wacky characters, only created for this game that no one played. I chose Sarah. She has a smaller hitbox. I think one of the main draws of Columns games are the wacky characters you encounter, and every character here has unique endings. Why did they go to all of this effort? This game should have sucked. Even the music is pretty good. This is a good game, and I actually recommend checking it out. Yeah, given the circumstances, there's no way in hell you'll get in trouble for emulating this. And there's not even an officially released cartridge of it. However, I also want to talk about that Game Boy Color version I mentioned earlier, which released later that same year. They could have just released Columns to the system straight up or made a downgraded version of the Super Famicom game, but instead they decided to include a gimmick. See, this isn't just Columns GB. This is Columns GB Tezuka Osamu characters. Yeah, this game is just Columns, but it includes the beloved characters of the esteemed Osamu Tezuka, like Astro Boy and Kimba the White Lion. This is a pretty good port of Columns though. That's really it. And those are all the games I wanted to talk about. If I didn't talk about a game, it's probably just because it's already received extensive coverage elsewhere, or I don't have anything to add about it, or it wasn't very good. I wanted to talk about obscure games, but I also wanted to talk about games I could actually recommend to people. On my search for Super Famicom games, I found some very obscure games, but some weren't very good. A good example would be the game Mystery Circle. This is a really obscure game with barely any information out there on it, and I decided to check it out because it was one of the only games on Wikipedia's list of Super Nintendo games to not have an article, and I found it to be one of the most underdocumented games I've ever come across. While it has an interesting idea, basically combining Tetris and kicks, it kinda sucks. The idea is not well executed, and I can't really recommend it, even though it's obscure and it has a cool concept. There's really not a lot to say about it anyways. But I recommend all of the other games I mentioned in this video. I recommend Camelot Tree as long as it doesn't make you motion sick. I recommend Libble Rabble, though I suggest you try to rope in someone else to play with you. I recommend Nanto Isho if you really like puzzle games or have kids. And I recommend Columns to pretty much everybody, just so you can experience how strangely good it is. But all in all, I really just wanted to find an excuse to talk about these games. Thanks for watching. Bye.